was at 5:51 p.m. when my office was closing at 6, cradling the last of my belongings, moving out of my apartment. I could hear the blood pumping in my ears. I knew I was pushing myself too hard, but I had to get everything to the office. I had to get the keys to the office by 6 to get out of my apartment because I was catching an international flight 3.5 hours later. And that kind of summarizes the intensity of this week. After moving out, I took that international flight, 7.5 hours to London Heathrow, layover in London Heathrow, took that to Milan, and then over the course of the week, put in about 80,000 steps with 18.2 kilograms or 42 pounds of luggage that I've been carrying around for those 80,000 steps. Last night was my first full show of the tour, and unfortunately I did not sell any merch. It was a very light crowd. I was basically performing to an empty room with 3 people kind of off to the side for most of the night. At some point 3 people did come into the room where I was performing to see me. So I did get the tour kickoff done, but I didn't make any money from it. And my next show is 11 days from now, a week from Saturday. That's just kind of how everything worked out. Try to book more shows just to not get them filled in. So I'll be doing a bunch of open mic nights between now and then. But I do really need some financial support. If you have the ability to buy some of my music at missionman.bandcamp.com or leave a super thanks on this YouTube video. Right now, my net earnings on YouTube are $41. They need to get to 100 before it cashes out. So if I can get a total of $60 for the super thanks, I can cash out $100 from YouTube. Or you can just leave a tip at missionman.net/tip, or you can buy this shirt that has my entire discography on the front and the tour dates on the back at missionman.net/Europe. If you have friends in Europe, family in Europe, anybody you think would enjoy seeing me perform, I'd really appreciate having them at the shows. As I'm sure you can hear, I'm also a little under the weather. It's only been the second time I've been sick in the last 6 years, so I've been very, very lucky in that regard. Pushing my body to the extremes the past week, walking around in the cold, and just being around a whole lot more people than usual because I'm traveling internationally. It does not surprise me that I've got a little something. It's also just that time of year, hair holes, all sorts of people coughing and sneezing and things like that. So I'm having a little Irish breakfast tea to kind of loosen everything up. So, week in summary, with this intense week, I am very glad that I did it, of course. It's my first time in Italy, and it was magnificent being able to speak to somebody in Italian, multiple people in Italian while I was in Italy, being able to communicate with people in a language that isn't my own. I have done that, in Spanish with some of my passengers with Uber as well, but I've never traveled to a country where I didn't speak where it wasn't my first language, but I did speak it. Like I've been to other countries where I didn't speak the language, but this is my first time going one where English wasn't the primary, and I actually spoke some of the language. So it's a very strong experience in that regard, being able to connect with people in that way. The fact that I did not run a car, I was completely public transit here, means this is much less vacation and much more real world, just not the one that I normally live in. So the 3 hours that it took me to get 7 kilometers from where I was staying with my Airbnb in Torino to the Rappresentate de Lista concert definitely showed me the public transit side of living in Torino, what people have to go through on a daily basis. And the Google Maps walking directions, the last mile of it or so was on a highway, so I couldn't physically do it, so I had to get an Uber. And they don't have regular Uber, they don't have UberX, they just have UberBlack. I had to get an UberBlack for that last mile, and then the buses didn't run late enough to get me back, and I didn't want to go through another 3-hour experience when my phone was down to about 20%. So I spent way too much money on an UberBlack. It was about 40 euros to go, I think 12 kilometers, 40 euros, which is like $45. You just run into some unexpected expenses like that, but to be able to be part of that concert when I was in the audience with a bunch of people who didn't speak English, but I spoke their language and understood a decent amount of what the band was playing because I'd listened to the music a lot before I came over. And that was a fantastic experience as well. And then, of course, if you watched my shorts, TikTok or Instagram Reels, have seen that my last day was on a train strike day, and I had to get from Reggio Emilia to Venice, which would have been about a 3-hour train ride, and it would have been 28 euros with 2 trains and then the bus that got me from the good part of Venice, the fun part of Venice, to the Venetian airport. But because of the strike, it took me 7 hours and about 70 euros to get there, because I got really lucky, at least on the first train getting from Reggio Emilia to Bologna. But then the first 2 trains from Bologna that would have worked for me both canceled. So I spent 40 euros on a bus ticket and saw some of the Italian countryside on the way up that way. I did not want to risk going to the fun part, the touristy part of Venice, and then get stuck there and have to pay 100 euros for a taxi to get to the airport. So I was only on mainland Venice, which that was by far my least favorite part of Italy. It didn't feel like Italy when I was walking around that area. Would not recommend when hanging out in mainland Venice, but maybe that was just my experience and not everybody else's. Anyway, so yeah, I did get to the airport and then took RyanAir. I'd heard all sorts of funny stories about RyanAir where they kind of funnel you into an area and then they take you off onto the shuttle bus and then they take you off to the plane. And sure enough, that's exactly what they did. You see in the short there, they kind of funneled in, and then they put us onto it. They did 2 groups. They did the priority group for the first bus and the regular group for the second bus. And the plane had 2 entrances, one on the right, one on the left. And it was just kind of a funny game to see, who would get in first. And I guess they've got all that efficiency stuff figured out because they are a budget airline. My bag did manage to fit. One of the dimensions was over what it kind of recommended, but I was able to squeeze it down because it's all closed. So I was able to close the top. So at least I didn't spend another 40 euros on the extra bag check there. And then, got into Dublin at 11 o'clock or so. Then went to customs. That was a really good conversation. And then I went into my hotel where I couldn't figure out how to work the lights because you had to slide in the room key so that you could then turn the lights off and on. But it was dark, so I couldn't even see the thing. So I didn't know if I had to slide it in or if I could just tap it. I kind of had an idea that's what I needed to do, but I wasn't sure. I hadn't been in a room like that before. Yeah. And once again, last night's show, real light, but I got the Tour Kickoff show out of the way and had a lot of fun with an old remix that had been kind of buried in my computer a little bit for time to make it happen. So yeah, I have my next show in 11 days, a week from Saturday. I'll be doing some open mics in between now and then to promote those shows. And I do have a couple of voiceover clients that have been giving me some work, but in the last week I've only made about $10 doing that. That was one of my main abilities to be able to make this tour happen, is to hopefully have that coming in consistently, but it is not so far. So I'm definitely reliant upon selling CDs, selling shirts. People who are watching the videos right now to tip me at missionman.net/tip about my music at missionman.bandcamp.com, or send a super thanks to YouTube. I'm going to need another $60 worth of YouTube earnings to have that first payout, because I have made $41 from YouTube in the 2.5 years that I've been monetized. Maybe it's 3.5. I think it's 3.5 years now that I've been monetized on YouTube. I've made $41 off it. So if you're going to give a super thanks that way, any amount, of course, is appreciated. But if it can help get me over that $100 threshold, then that's extra amazing. So I will be coming to you with a lot more short videos, of course, because I can just kind of put together highlight clips that way, and then every once in a while come back with a vlog like this one, hopefully with a little less bass in my voice, a little less sickness in my voice, and hopefully a little lighter backpack, because hopefully I've sold some CDs and some t-shirts. It's the first week of the tour. I've got 8.5 more weeks to make it through. By that I mean financially. I mean the actual experience I'm very much looking forward to. I'm very excited about being over here and being on my first European tour. Yeah, thank you all very much for watching. I hope that you have an absolutely incredible day, and if you're in Europe, the UK, I hope to see you all